Well, I listened to the interview podcast, so you didn't have to.
Thank
And
you for
and
that.
so our listeners don't have to either.
They can if they want to.
Yeah, sure, you can. But it's also like 60 minutes of like Scott Pelley saying that Bari Weiss murdered the show and that it's
Yeah.
like the only thing that's like it is your spouse being murdered. He actually said that.
Christine, are we really talking about this lady again?
I guess so.
She just can't keep out of the news.
Well, she can't keep herself from fucking with the news.
Oh, yeah. So, Christine, who are we canceling today?
Oh, should we just go ahead and do? Should we just go ahead and do it?
Let's just do it.
We're canceling Bari Weiss.
Again. Good God, this lady needs to go away. Hey everyone, I'm Caitlin Burns.
And I'm Christine Grimaldi.
And you're listening to Cancel Me Daddy,
the show where we take a closer look at all the panic around political media.
With thoughtful analysis.
And verbal shitposting!
If you want to support the show, head on over to patreon.com/cancelmedaddy. Oh my God, it's been 5 years. We're changing the intro. What's going on?
I know. Well, I think that the cancel culture discussion is still very applicable to what we do.
Yes.
But we have kind of narrowed the focus a little bit in talking about the intersection of politics and the media.
Yeah, we don't so much talk about like the panic around cancel culture because there kind of isn't one anymore. Like it pops up every once in a while and we cover it when it does. But this show has really been a media criticism show for a long time. So yeah, we thought let's change the intro just a little bit and be a little bit more accurate about what the show does.
Mm-hmm.
So, Christine, exciting episode ahead.
Bari Weiss is back in the news because she is, as I said, fucking with the news again.
And for our guest this week, we have no one. It's just the two of us.
It's just us, baby.
Just the two of us. You
and I.
All right, let's get into it.
Okay.
That was so stupid.
It was great.
I think it's good that we addressed it, though, actually. Yeah. All right, Christine.
Mm-hmm.
What did Bari Weiss do this time?
Okay, the big news in this latest cycle is that Bari Weiss has been just running rampant through CBS 60 Minutes. There had already been a number of firings, I believe, in May. And then on June 2nd, Scott Pelley was fired.
And who is Scott Pelley?
I was going to go with a very decorated older white journalist man, but you may be able to add some more nuance to that.
Yeah, I did take a look at his history. Mostly I was trying to find some like dirt about him, but he's cleaner than a virgin's honeypot, as they say in Shawshank Redemption.
Beautiful.
I don't know why I just said that.
I mean, somebody's got to be in media.
Listen, he's won awards, right? Like, oh, that is a big white wall of text. Okay. He has won over 51 Emmy Awards, 4 Alfred DuPont Columbia Silver Batons, 3 George Foster Peabody Awards. Reporting on child slavery in India earned Pelley and his team at 60 Minutes the Investigative Reporters and Editors Award in 1999. Like, the guy, anything that you could do in evening TV journalist, the guy has pretty much done.
Yeah, he's been there for something like 30-something years. I think 37, if I
mean,
correctly.
His resume is long and established. At the same time, he is a centrist, both sides journalist. You don't get to that position where you're doing that work for 30 years without playing both sides.
Yeah.
So he is part of the reason why the journalism field has reached this point.
Yeah, and I think that most of the coverage of him has been, and to be fair to him, like deservedly glowing, because he did speak truth to power on the way out of CBS in 60 Minutes. Then he did a New York Times interview where he really got into kind of the meat and potatoes of what happened. And that was harder for me to kind of accept just as it was.
Yeah.
yes, he was talking about 60 Minutes, but he was also talking about it as if it was divorced from the state of journalism today, as if Bari Weiss is not indicative of a larger conservative media takeover, the consolidation that we've seen, that just if Bari Weiss went away, everything at CBS and 60 Minutes would go back to normal. And that's just not the case.
Yeah. So, it occurs to me that we haven't really broken down in any kind of serious format what exactly has happened at CBS since Bari Weiss took
Mhm.
over. Obviously, we had the episode last year with Michael Hobbs where we talked about her hiring at CBS News and how
Mhm.
we all thought it would be a disaster. Newsflash, we were right. But you have gone ahead and put together a lovely timeline
Mhm.
of events. So take us through what has been going on over there and what led to this fallout with,
Mhm.
Scott Pelley.
Well, I took the trouble of putting in exact dates because this all happened so fast,
Yes.
really.
Some of this will be a repeat of that last episode, but we're just going to hit some important points just
Yeah,
so our listeners are all on the same page.
yeah. I think it really all starts on October 21st, 2024.
Okay.
And that's when Donald Trump, who was still a presidential candidate, we were just, a couple weeks away from the presidential election in 2024. He sued CBS for $10 billion,
Yes.
specifically over a 60 Minutes interview in which he alleged that CBS and 60 Minutes deceptively edited Kamala Harris to make her seem more appealing. And I guess, like, for Trump to see less appealing.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And it should be noted CBS and 60 Minutes and other places have selectively edited Trump repeatedly to make him look better.
They sure have.
I mean, editing things, it just happens. We edit the show. There's so much that you don't see
Hmm.
behind the scenes.
We've talked about making a bloopers reel at some point.
We have. We
Hmm.
have.
For the Patreon.
Yeah, for the Patreon. Pay up, buckos.
So Trump filed this lawsuit. I think it's notable in the U.S. District Court in Northern Texas, which Kate has written about for her newsletter, because that is home to Reed O'Connor, who has just been awful for trans folks.
Yeah.
And this particular case went to another Trump-appointed federal judge, Matthew Kacsmaryk. And he's the same federal
Who's
judge.
Reed O'Connor Jr., basically.
Yeah, the same federal judge at the center of the Mifepristone battle.
I actually mentioned both of them in a recent piece on my newsletter
Mm.
that we'll link to in the show notes.
Reed O'Connor was a Trump appointee, right?
No, he was a W. Bush.
Oh, he's been there a long time.
Yep.
He has this racket down.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Kate talks a lot about court shopping, and I think that this is very integral to the project of media consolidation that we're seeing. Like, you can't have the kind of media consolidation that we're seeing without selectively picking courts that will be favorable to you.
Yeah, essentially, Trump and the conservatives have this court that they can always turn to get a favorable ruling.
Mhm.
So when you have a court and a judge in your back pocket, like, it makes sense that CBS would settle, and that's what they ended up doing.
That's right. For how much did they settle for? 16 million. But we're going to get to that because a few other things happen.
Yes, what happens next?
Well, the presidential election on November 5th, 2024.
Oh, shit.
We all know what happened.
Wait, how did that go again?
And not well. Not well for anyone, really. Mhm. Just a couple weeks later,
Yeah.
Trump said that he was going to elevate Brendan Carr to chair of the Federal Communications Commission. So Brendan Carr already was one of the commissioners at the FCC. So he didn't need like a new nomination process, a new Senate confirmation vote. Trump was just like, okay, like when I'm in after inauguration, like you're going to be FCC chair.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And
Brendan Carr is a soul-sucking vampire.
Yes. Who likes to tweet back at people who call him that. So
yeah,
this could be a fun exercise in media censorship.
It reminds me of the time I told Senator Ben Sass to eat a bag of dicks, and he quote tweeted me.
Oh, what did he say?
He said, "This is very classy from an alleged journalist."
Sir. He shouldn't be a bag of dicks then.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ben. Have fun with your I don't know.
Oh, okay. We got to take that part out of the podcast. Got to take that part out of the podcast. I may be laughing, but we're taking that part out of the podcast.
I am on one today. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. We all have our moments.
Let's get back
May,
on track.
take that part out of the podcast.
She's not going to want to, by the way.
I know she's not. May,
she
take that part of the
when
podcast.
She doesn't, when she takes something up but didn't want to.
Well, apologies.
So Brendan Carr becomes chair of the FCC.
Mm-hmm. And he's very bad. Trump's second inauguration is January 20th, 2025. And by the next month, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission and the EU have cleared the Paramount-Skydance merger.
So this means that Skydance is taking over CBS's parent company.
Correct.
And you had two big things in the fallout of that. One is they fired Stephen Colbert.
Correct.
A couple weeks ago, he had his last episode. Stephen, if you ever happen to run into this, please come on the podcast. We'd love to have you.
We'd love to have you on Cancel Me Daddy.
Come on, because the show name is funny at the very least. And then the other thing is Bari Weiss ends up taking over CBS News.
She sure does.
And what happens in July?
Okay. So in July, we have the settlement. We have Colbert joking about the settlement, which then gets him canceled days later. The last episode aired recently.
Literally canceled, by the way, not even the fake canceled.
Yeah, no, like the writing, he was canceled. The show will not go on.
I know this episode is not about Stephen Colbert, but was he canceled in the cancel culture sense in your mind?
No, I don't think so.
I think he was.
Really?
I mean, the right does cancel culture too. Let's not forget.
Yeah. It just, they seem to always profit from it in the end.
Yeah.
Whereas the people on the left, like, yes, Stephen Colbert is like an immensely privileged human being, but he lost his job in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, July 24th, the FCC officially approves the Paramount-Skydance merger, closes on August 7th, 2025, and now we have David Ellison as the chairman and CEO of Paramount-Skydance. He is the son of Larry Ellison, who is a tech billionaire CEO.
Yes.
So
was it Microsoft that he came up with? Larry Ellison, was it Microsoft?
No, it's
Oracle.
Oracle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's a fail son. He's like a billionaire nepo baby. If you go to his Wikipedia page, like it says what he's done, which is like produced like some kind of like very bro-y movies. I think Top Gun Maverick is on there.
Of course.
Yeah. I mean, I did watch it, even though I knew that like we were basically watching propaganda for the U.S. military.
I mean, it was an okay movie.
Yeah.
It could have been worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They should have had Charlie come back.
Well, yeah, but you know, she isn't Hollywood hot anymore.
That's yep. And so that's what we're dealing with at CBS.
So she got canceled. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what we're dealing with at CBS. So in September, we have Trump and Brendan Carr fucking over Jimmy Kimmel on ABC.
Yes.
So just like a brief aside, because we are mostly firmly in CBS land here. But I think that what happens to Jimmy Kimmel really portends what will happen at CBS with 60 Minutes.
Yes. So Jimmy Kimmel was taken off the air, right? Because of comments about or jokes about Charlie Kirk. And we actually covered this. We put Jimmy Kimmel in the thumbnail of the episode back then, but we had Kat Tenbarjan to talk about that particular incident. But we really didn't spend a ton of time of, talking about Kimmel. It was more all of the other people, and there were hundreds of people who had their livelihoods messed with because they made comments about Charlie Kirk, who is dead.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then on October 6th, David Ellison acquires the Free Press, which is Bari Weiss's, what do you want to call it? News outlet? Substack, yeah. And installs her in the newly created editor-in-chief role at CBS News.
Yes, and we have that. For more information on that, we also did an episode on that.
We sure did.
That's the aforementioned episode with Michael Hobbs. I think it was called the Why Did CBS News Hire Cancel Culture's Biggest Grifter?
Yes.
And things pretty much have immediately fell apart.
Yeah. So by December, Trump was attacking David Ellison and the Ellison family on Truth Social. He said, "For those people that think I am close with the new owners of CBS, please understand that 60 Minutes has treated me far worse since the so called takeover than they have ever treated me before. If they are friends, I'd hate to see my enemies." So I think that this puts the fear of God into David Ellison and Bari Weiss,
Yeah.
because we have what, 5 days later, December 21st, that's when Bari Weiss, in her editor-in-chief role at CBS News, pulled a 60-minute segment on CCOT, which is the maximum security El Salvadorian prison that incarcerated Venezuelan deportees from the United States.
Yes.
I believe she said at the time, like, she needed comment from the administration. They gave the administration time to comment.
They also, like, she pulled it very late in the editorial process to the
Yes.
point where it ran on international affiliates, so everybody saw the segment before it aired on US 60 Minutes.
Yeah, in January. So they did run it in January 2026, and they updated it, I think, with some statements, but it didn't substantively change from what I understand.
And that caused a big uproar in the newsroom. Multiple journalists basically rebelled over that decision because it is unusual. You don't pull a TV segment like the day of.
Yeah, hours before.
It's not like in print. Like on the Free Press, you could just not publish something. But in TV, you have to promo things. They were promoting the segment that it was going to run. And then all of a sudden it gets pulled.
Yeah, you can't tell me that it's not a coincidence that the Trump criticism came out and then this happened. And so by January of 2026, so we're firmly in this joyride of a year, Tony Dukepill, if I'm saying his name correctly, takes over as anchor of the CBS Evening News. You may remember him because he was the subject of one of our earliest segments of your Ombudsman's Corner, where he just got into it with Ta-Nehisi Coates, just started accusing him of being...
Accused him of being a terrorist.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Coates was like, wow, that was really racist.
He sure was.
If I don't laugh, I scream.
Yep. So we are seeing where things are going. Yeah, I mean, like, Tony Dukepill definitely has Bari Weiss's, like, full support.
Oh, I thought you were going to say lack of charisma.
That too. Do you think that she has charisma?
Bari Weiss?
Yeah.
No. I don't think so.
Do you think he has charisma?
No.
None of them have the charisma.
No.
Okay.
Rizless behavior.
Maybe that should be the name of the episode. Well, in May, Anderson Cooper left 60 Minutes with a warning to maintain editorial independence. And Bari Weiss, according to Status News, which we have been citing a lot lately on this podcast because Oliver Darcy and his fabulous crew have been all over this story.
Yeah.
Bari Weiss was infuriated over Anderson's parting words.
Yes. I also think it's funny that, like, anytime something goes down at CBS, like, somebody on staff just immediately emails it to Status.
Yeah, no, it's great. I would love that kind of pipeline for my journalism.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that last episode. You know, Anderson Cooper himself, famously a centrist, both sides kind of guy. Last week he talked about how he's like a queer overseer, and so is Bari Weiss, to be frank with you. And Weiss wanted him, I think, to take over CBS Evening News, and he didn't want anything to do with her.
Yeah.
So there's one highly regarded white male journalist out the door, which is strange because usually Bari Weiss's only talent is appealing to white male fail sons.
Yes.
Anderson Cooper, famously a Vanderbilt.
He is, yes. Yeah, and for all of, like, the criticisms that we had of him in the last episode, it also is saying something when you have, like, very centrist journalists being like, what the fuck is happening?
I want to dig down on that in just a second, even further, but let's finish the timeline. Let's catch up to today.
Okay, well, we're really almost there. We're almost there. Okay. So you have Anderson leaving a couple weeks later, also in May, at the end of May. CBS fired two 60 Minutes correspondents, including the CCOT segment journalist
Mm.
and the executive producer of 60 Minutes. And so
Ah,
that's when Bari Weiss installs a former New York Times tech columnist and documentary filmmaker named Nick Bilton as the new executive producer of 60 Minutes.
and he's kind of like an empty suit guy.
Yeah, yeah. There's not much there.
He's like not qualified to be an executive producer at a major TV network.
Yeah, it's funny because getting to the today of it all, Scott Pelley in that interview with the New York Times about his firing, repeatedly said Bari Weiss is not qualified, Bilton is not qualified. And it's weird because like the automatic response to me, especially like when I hear like a woman is not qualified, is like, ooh,
Yeah.
because often women like cis women particularly like will not apply to jobs because like they don't have like the one qualification, or at least like that's what we're told.
Oh yeah, that is not a cis only phenomenon,
Yeah.
by the
Yeah,
way.
no, that's what we're told. Maybe that's just like a highly anxious former honor student kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. But like these people really are not qualified to
No.
do any of
Like
this.
you and I have done more video work than Nick Bilton has.
Yeah. It's wild.
And now he's executive producer of one of the most watched video news
Mm.
programs on the planet.
Yeah. Well, and there's not qualified, and then they're just being like having total antipathy towards like the project of the news.
Well, I think that like Weiss and Ellison are looking for yes men
Yeah.
in these hiring decisions.
Oh, so they're basically constructing the Trump administration at CBS.
I mean, the Trump administration is not the organization that invented yes men, but yes,
Mhm.
you're not wrong.
Well, in the second administration, it's been only yes men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that brings us to a now famous
Mm-hmm.
June 2nd
Mm-hmm.
staff meeting.
Yes. No, that was the day Pelley was fired. It was one day after the staff meeting with
Okay.
Bilton, in which Scott Pelley just reamed into Nick Bilton and accused Bari Weiss of murdering. That's his word, murdering 60 Minutes. Now, Bari was not present at the meeting. This was like all directed at Nick. She is murdering 60 Minutes. She does not love this place. She was brought in to kill it, and she's been doing exactly that. She has no qualifications for her job. You have slender qualifications for this job. The changes she's made at the evening news have been catastrophic. So why should we expect that any of this is going to be any better? And then Nick Bilton responded, well, I will show you. That's what I have to say.
He said, I will show you. That's what I have to say. That is my plan over the next 2 weeks. I'll be meeting with everyone. I'm very excited to meet with everyone, yourself included. And then the two of them trade barbs and finish the meeting. Mm-hmm. And then Bilton tells Pelley, enjoy the bagels.
Oh my God. Which is like, so that was the thing I related to the most. Having been in like really tense journalism staff meetings with like shitty bagels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of bagels do you think they were?
I mean, if they were New York bagels, like even the shitty ones are like better than average.
I heard it's the shitty New York water that makes the bagels so good.
It sure does. It sure does.
Asking the important questions here on Cancel Me Daddy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and Scott Pelley also was accused of like being rude to Nick Bilton by somebody else in the room who was like a Bari Weiss deputy. I mean,
he earned it.
Yeah, journalism is also like famously built on like tense interactions with your editors. So I think that these people, are just looking for affirmation.
A safe space.
Yeah. Yeah, a safe space.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, look, they fired a bunch of people off of Pelley's team, off of the show in general that he really liked. And then they went and they fired more people off of his team and people that are like accomplished journalists. Of course you're gonna be pissed.
Yeah.
Like that's business. That happens all the time. And like Pelley, I mean, okay, listen. The guy is a classic both sides white guy journalist. But kudos to him for actually like standing up and being like, well, this is bullshit.
Yeah, I've had not classic white guy journalists not stand up for me in editorial meetings, so gotta give it to him there.
So Pelley goes and talks to our favorite outlet,
The New York
The New
Times.
York Times, which...
Be that as it may.
People listening can't see my face right now, but I don't know how to feel about this.
This is why, but I said this on the last episode, like, this is why, particularly for the New York Times and my favorite, The Atlantic, if I do cite those in the show notes, I put the reporter's name.
Yeah.
Because usually that could signal that that reporter is more credible than the rest, or if we should question that source because of who was writing it.
The reality is the New York Times employs 1,700 journalists, and they're all different from each other. And yes, management has their agendas, but there are people who still manage to put out good work here and there. And this is coming from one of the biggest New York Times haters on the planet.
Yeah. Well, I listened to the interview podcast, so you didn't have to.
Thank you for that.
And so our listeners don't have to either.
They can if they want to.
Yeah, sure, you can. But it's also like 60 minutes of like Scott Pelley saying that Bari Weiss murdered the show, and that it's like the only thing that's like it is your spouse being murdered. He actually said that.
So the only part that I picked up out of this podcast interview was him talking about how they wanted his team to change a segment that they did about Renee Good's murder to make the protesters look more violent, and to be sure to say that that Renee Good's vehicle drove towards the ICE officer that shot her, even though that was not true.
Right. And they had already, like, his team was already trying to kind of, I hate to say it, both sides of the situation.
Yeah.
I believe Pelley had instructed the producers to look through coverage and make sure that they captured images of the protesters being confrontational or potentially violent. But this simply wasn't true, and he wasn't going to go there.
Yeah. So it's really interesting to me how his team and Pelley himself were going out of their way to both sides this basically government execution of a citizen. And even that wasn't good enough for Bari Weiss. Like, they're already putting their fingers on the scale to present a certain viewpoint or to present things in a way so that people would feel a certain way about what happened. And then Bari Weiss comes in and says, well, actually, we're going to do even more of that.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting watching all of these, like, both sides journalists who have been doing this for years say, I've had enough of this. Like, this has gone too far. When this is what they've been doing for like 20, 30 years.
Yeah. It was hard listening to an hour of that podcast and then, reading kind of the summary that the New York Times put out, because it was just so divorced from the reality of what journalism is and how we got here.
Yeah.
And just completely lacking any sort of context, like that this happened in a vacuum with Bari Weiss. He said that, and he being Scott Pelley, there's a subtle political bias that I have never seen at 60 Minutes before or at CBS News before. I think that's laughable.
Yeah.
Because the bias has always been there. There is no such thing as quote unquote objective media. And Bari Weiss is about as subtle as the garbage truck that just like passed through my neighborhood and made noise on the microphone.
That was before we started recording.
Yes. So Pelley says, that is my hope, a return to sanity. We can save this. Is it worth saving, Kate?
I think it probably is. I think there's still a room for Saturday evening broadcast news. Sorry, Sunday evening. It's really interesting to me that before all of this happened, like, famously, CBS News's audience was shrinking because their viewers were literally dying. Like, the demographic is so old that, like, there are not young people who are excited about 60 Minutes. And this is the most anybody's talked about 60 Minutes in a long time. But it was still a place to go to get well-documented TV journalism.
Yeah.
But even still, what they produced was in this frame of we can't be too biased, but in doing so, they add bias into the story, right?
Correct.
Like CBS News did a segment a couple years ago that basically was listening to all the anti-trans sources on youth transition, and they tried to make it balanced, but just running the story in the first place was unbalanced.
Right. Because
That was the last time I
you're
paid
legitimizing
attention to them.
people without any sense of legitimacy.
Right, and that's what happens is in the search for both sidesism, you end up elevating somebody who doesn't have either a correct viewpoint or a factually based viewpoint, or if there is like a topic that is very obviously one way, you have to artificially elevate somebody else, right? Like with climate change, it's like the reason we have climate change deniers is because there's an easy way to get on the news because people are saying, oh, well, climate change is a problem. And the news looked around and said, okay, well, we have to balance this with something. Oh, here's somebody who's a skeptic of it. Let's put them on the air. And that's how we get climate change skepticism. That's how we get anti-vaxxers, the whole 9 yards.
The anti-abortion stuff too.
Anti-abortion stuff, right? Like the permanent state of not like pretending that we don't know things is harmful because news programs are supposed to know things and supposed to teach their listenership things.
Yeah, and even sometimes by repeating, I mean, you want to call it a falsehood or a lie, you're legitimizing it too.
Right.
Like every time I would cover abortion, and if I was writing about like, I don't know, abortion pill reversal, which is not true, and I would say like, and this is like an argument that the right uses and it's not true. It's also, do I really even want to put it in there at all? Because it's almost like a political sign, you know, like
right.
when you just happen to see somebody's name and then you get to the voting booth and you're like, oh, I guess like that person's name, the last one I saw.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that there needs to be much more complex and nuanced conversations about even what to include when the other side is completely full of shit.
Yeah, I just don't believe in the let the audience decide of it all. I think if you are an expert in gathering information and presenting information, do that.
Yeah, no, this is a newsroom problem.
And if it goes one way and, you know, that is politically unbalanced, oh, well, that's life.
Yeah, maybe it's teaching you something.
Yeah.
Maybe that is, I don't know, maybe that's the point of news. Instead of trying to fake balance stuff, it's like maybe it's supposed to teach you something to come to an outcome that you're not trying to manufacture through both sidesing.
I keep coming back to this though, because this can't have been the first time Scott Pelley has had a boss tell him to change a story in a certain way. So what makes it different with Bari Weiss in your mind?
First of all, I don't know how many times he was told no in his life. I presume he was, because I've been a journalist, like certainly not of his prestige, and I've been told no a lot. But I don't know like what kind of power you have in broadcast news, like if that insulates you more, right? Because like it's like the Scott Pelley. Are you really gonna try to criticize him, right?
Yeah.
But even if so, I'm sure that he's gotten into like knockdown dragouts with editors before, right? Like, haven't we all? I think that what makes the situation unique is just the level of power that Bari Weiss has. I mean, she's literally backed by a billionaire, fail son, and Donald Trump. I mean, she has like the economy and the administration behind her.
I just wonder if the person had been more traditionally qualified for the job and told him to do the same thing, would he react in the same way?
That's a really good point, and I don't know.
And I'm going to hate myself for a second. And listener, please, I don't actually believe this. I just want to take our minds somewhere different. Would he have the same reaction if Bari Weiss was a guy?
Well, that goes back to like the you're not qualified thing. To
like,
be fair,
and again, I am not defending Bari Weiss because fuck her all the way.
Yep.
Fuck off.
No, but I
get out of my industry.
These are important questions to ask.
Yeah.
because no one else is in the coverage of this. Like,
No, the New York Times isn't going to ask him a question like
I'm
that.
not trying to cancel me daddy. I almost called us call me daddy.
Call
Oh my
her
god.
daddy.
Call her daddy.
That's the other show.
Yeah, that's the other show. Thank you, algorithm. But not to cancel me daddy's horn, but I think that what makes us unique is that we are answering these questions. Like, I'm not taking away
Yeah.
from the stuff that Pelley did that was right, but I am trying to complicate the conversation because it is a more complicated conversation than just Bari Weiss is murdering 60 Minutes and it's a terrible fit. It's probably not her fault, but it's just a terrible fit. It's more than that. It's so much more than that.
Yeah. Again, I think she is murdering 60 Minutes. Like, I don't think he's wrong in
I
his
don't think he's
analysis,
wrong.
but I do wonder if he would react in the same way and be so public about it if it was another person in that role doing the same decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And ditto Anderson Cooper.
And they're fair questions to ask. Like, we're not preordaining the outcomes of those questions. Maybe Anderson Cooper and Scott Pelley would have, been on the right side of history. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
Probably. I mean, I really don't know, but I think it's important that we ask those questions.
And to be clear, I think this was going to happen regardless because she is like uniquely unqualified.
She is uniquely unqualified.
And we called it at the time, right? So, like, again, I don't know that I believe any of the questions that I just asked, but there has to be somebody asking those questions.
Yeah.
So, having said all that, Christine, what do you think the future of 60 Minutes is going to be?
Oh, I don't know. I am scared for it because I like you for all of 60 Minutes flaws. I do think that there is still a place for it in the media.
Yeah.
I am terrified that kind of centrist boomers may be tuning into Fox News Light on CBS Evening News and on 60 Minutes. Yeah, I think that there's going to be more bloodshed at the network and on its shows. I believe 3 60 Minutes correspondents, including Leslie Stahl, put out a statement that they were staying.
Yeah.
I don't know how long that lasts, and I don't know how much give and take there's going to be. Because when push comes to shove, are they going to give it to Nick Bilton and Bari Weiss the way that Scott Pelley did? It's that old argument about like whether you can change things from the inside or the outside. And I actually think, like, as in politics, there is a place for people on the inside and a place for people on the outside, and like that's how things get done. But sometimes the inside is so fucked that you gotta go.
I wonder about the future of the program. Its ratings are crumbling. Like, it seems like its public credibility is tanking. I think it was naive for them to think that they could convert this Fox News Light, as you said, dynamic into more viewers, because I just don't think the audience for that is very big to begin with.
Yeah.
And it's certainly smaller than the audience that they were appealing to before. So I do wonder if we'll get to the point where David Ellison goes, well, this isn't worth the money I'm spending on it anymore, or if he just doesn't care and just wants to have a spot for his own views to be told.
Yeah, which is, I think, something we talked about with Stephen Thrasher last week, right? Like the billionaires wanting to shift culture. So they'll try whatever they need to do to make it not a money loser, but they still want to be like these big shapers of culture. Oh, I know where we have to go with this.
Where?
CNN.
Oh yeah, they're taking over CNN.
Allegedly
in the works.
Allegedly in the works, and no news as of June 12th when we are recording this has broken. I saw like a couple of like fake headlines that were like, deal struck, Bari Weiss in charge at CNN, and then it wasn't actually true.
I mean, the thing about all of this is there's always a competitor, right? Like, if they turn CNN into Fox News Light, then whatever remaining liberal viewers there were are just going to go to MS Now.
Yeah.
And, ditto 60 Minutes and CBS News are going to go to ABC and NBC. They're all competing for a decreasing number of cable viewers and TV viewers to begin with, as things like YouTube and all the streaming services and TikTok, Twitter, Blue Sky, Insta, all of them are competing now as news providers. So like all of these TV networks have never had lower cultural cachet than they do now, which is why so many of these right-wing billionaires feel like they can afford to buy these things.
Yeah. Yeah. I do wonder, although there is always a competitor with media consolidation being what it is, with the Trump administration rubber stamping the Paramount-Skydance merger. I mean, like, what happens if these billionaire bros just keep buying up media properties?
I think there will always be outlets
Mhm.
for alternative views until it's
Mhm.
illegal to do so.
Wow, that's a important and terrifying statement.
On that note, I hope you enjoyed the show.
Thanks for joining us.
But seriously, if you want to support the show, hit us up on Patreon, patreon.com/cancelmedaddy. And actually, here's a segment from our Patreon exclusive episode and Apple Podcast members next week. If you want your Cancel Me Daddy weekly, those are the places to go to get it. So this story came out and it kind of reignited everything. And I will say there was a second story this morning by the New York Post who quoted a different woman who lived in Maine who was a leftist who confirmed some details, like that he knew that the tattoo was a Nazi tattoo, which he has consistently maintained that it isn't. And half of Blue Sky has been trying to gaslight the other half into not believing that he knew it was a Nazi tattoo. Of course, it's a Totenkopf, which is like a death head. It's the SAS symbol that they had on their caps at all of the concentration camps. And this person says that Plattner got it because, along with his unit, because they did so much killing in Iraq that they found solidarity with the SS. That was this morning. I honestly haven't been online to see how that's been shaking out.
I would hate to witness that discourse.
So I am going to bring as fun of a fact as you can bring to this story, and it is that this woman who came forward, who seems very cool, by the way, she joked with her mom that Graham Plattner stole her pie plate, which is honestly extremely relatable for Maine dating. But she on Twitter goes by the handle 420 Mercy Maine 69, and Mercy is a character from my favorite video game, Overwatch. So, my Overwatch senses perked up when I saw that, and now I want to play Overwatch with this woman. But I don't particularly want to spend a lot of time on Plattner himself. We don't do election analysis on this show, and I really want to focus on the media of it all.
Yeah, and I think that the discourse about whether he's good or bad is that's already played out. And I think that we have some real media criticisms to make here.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is if he gets elected, he votes for a Democrat for Senate majority. And, it's sad that that's where we're at, but that's where I'm at.
Well, allegedly, hopefully, real question, no shade. Do you think that there's a chance that he could end up like Kristen Sinema or, God, I blanked on John Fetterman's name for a minute.
Fetterman?
Yeah.
I don't know. This guy has no record to judge by.
He's not proving himself trustworthy.
All we have are statements of his positions, and he's already lied repeatedly.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I can't answer that question.
So now we are stepping away from the Plattner.
Yes. There's a very small group of white male, predominantly white male, lefty journos who have gotten extremely weird about this guy. Cancel Me Daddy is a Flytrap media production. Today's show was made by me, Caitlin Burns, and my incredible co-host, Christine Grimaldi, along with our editor, May Schultz.
Dee Peterschmidt made our theme song, and Romy Tirico designed our graphics. Transcriptions by Heather Langefeld. Our thumbnails are made by Sarah at bursty.com. That's BURSSTY.com. Ads by Multitude Productions.
Our show is made possible by the incredible cancelers supporting our work, especially the member of our Canceler Hall of Fame with great power to cancel all of her enemies, Meg.
We appreciate your support.
Happy canceling!